All right, good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Planning Board and valued community representatives, I welcome you all to this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chairman, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today, we come together with a shared commitment to shaping the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the needs of our residents both now and in the future. As we engage in our deliberations this evening, let us remember the profound impact these decisions have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we're residents like you. It is our duty to maintain transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in our proceedings, ensuring that the voices of all are heard and respected. Together, we must embrace the responsibility entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. With that, I would like to call this meeting of the Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025 Saco Planning Board to order. I look forward to the productive discussions and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. Thank you. With us this evening, we have myself, Matt Provenzel, the chair of the Planning Board, and to my left, Joyce Larry Clark, our vice chair, and to her left, Planning Board members Jeff Bruchot and Camille White, along with Planning Board member Jim Mollier to my right. We have as well with us this evening our City Council liaison, Phil Hatch, is absent with us this evening, but we do have our city planner, Emily Cole Prescott, and Lisa Harmon, our planning compliance manager. We will begin this evening with our approval of our draft meeting minutes from May 2025. Board members have any questions, comments, or edits? Jeff.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I thought we should edit, I think it was just a typo on the section under the Eastview Parkway. We should revise that Jeff Brochu closed the public hearing with Jeff Brochu second the motion, and it carried 4-0.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other thoughts, questions, or edits?
Mr. Chair, with that edit, I'll move to approve the the May 20th Planning Board meetings minutes.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I will second.
Second by Jeff, thank you. And Camille.
Mr. Chair, I would like to disclose just before we approve these minutes that I have reviewed the notes of that meeting as well as watching the video. So I'm prepared to attend any conversations around those matters associated with those meeting notes today.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to point out I wasn't at the last meeting, but also reviewed the materials and watched the video.
Great, thank you, Joyce. All right, with that, motion made by Jim, seconded by Jeff to approve and accept the minutes as edited. Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is our public comment period. This is an opportunity for anyone from the public to come before the board, come to the podium and ask or speak about any planning items. Please keep any project-specific items to a later date once we review those at a public hearing. But if anyone is with us this evening that would like to speak, come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect those comments and address them as necessary. All right, seeing no participation, we will continue to our next item. This is our public hearing guidelines, excuse me. If anyone has any questions, these are printed documents that we have at the rear of the auditorium, as well as digital versions. If anyone has any questions, please let us know and we can answer those. With that, we will move to our applications and public hearings this evening. Our first being 439 Main Street, map 33, lot 25-1. And this is a proposal to convert existing commercial space into affordable housing units. This is a public hearing and continued application review for site plan. And this is within the medium density residential zoning district. Board members, any conflicts or disclosures on this item? And with that, Emily, anything to add?
The one thing at the last meeting that came up was more information on the 30-year restriction. The applicant has provided a document detailing how they plan to do that. Staff also recommends that that the use restriction be filed on the registry to alert any potential future buyers of the property. Additionally, the correspondence for the after the fact packet includes an email from Austin with an ability to serve from Maine Water Company. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions for Emily at this time? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering can you clarify, because I feel like as I review this application, the initial intent is that they're converting commercial space and into 7 dwelling units, and it says in a condo configuration, and we reference condo in several points, and then we're referencing rentals at other points in the application. And I guess my question is, how is it going to be held? Are they going to be able to sell these condos individually, and they're still going to be under some sort of a larger covenant to retain that affordability clause for 7 years, or are they all going to be held by the applicant, and they're basically a 7-unit multifamily rental building, and therefore we have easier control or easier supervision of the affordability clause?
Either way, we can accommodate the affordability clause. I think it would be good to get it on the record as to what the end goal is for the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. And with us this evening, we have the applicant.
Hi, Austin Fagan with BH2M here representing Jackson Brown, J. Brown Investments. Just a quick overview since tonight is a public hearing. This is a 7-unit residential condo conversion with 4 affordable units. This project was last seen May 6 for a completeness review. There were a few comments from the board, and we have also received comments from staff that have been addressed in the most recent revisions that you see in your packet. Some of these include additional turning templates for a fire truck showing that it can stay on the pavement without going off. We have relocated the dumpster and added some provisions so that a dumpster can turn around without going too far into the site and without going onto the abutting property. We have also, as Emily mentioned, provided an updated water use calculation, which was just a miscalculation on my part for the 1-bedroom units. Outside of that, the applicant is intending to retain these units. They are currently condo units, all owned by one entity. So I suppose in the future they could be sold individually. His intent is currently to hold all of them and rent them out, but it's not to paint ourselves in a box and say that they couldn't be sold in the future. And I believe with this restriction, we have proposed 4 units in one building. That will be the affordable portion of the project. So there could be, each individual unit will be sold with that clause if they are ever sold in their deed. And that's something that you may see in the application, a yearly reporting that's going to be given to the planning office, so it can be tracked that way, as well as any deed research that's done will show that requirement. We can call out specific units in that covenant, if you will. Other than that, we did receive one email comment from an abutter looking for a 6-foot fence. Currently, there is a wooded area between this parcel and theirs. This isn't a new building. We're not chopping down any woods in order to change the existing characteristics of the neighborhood. So the applicant does not intend to build the 6-foot fence that they're requesting, but we'd be happy to take any questions from the board or the public at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant at this time? Jim?
Following up on Jeff's question, if these were sold as individual condo units, with that 30-year restriction, how is that controlled if, a third party buys that unit and ostensibly they, meet the affordable housing criteria when they buy it, but then they later don't? What does that do to the, if they're separate condos, what does that do to the covenant for the workforce housing or affordable housing?
So are you saying if someone purchases the property and then later on no longer applies, or so?
No longer qualifies for
Qualifies.
that affordable housing standard.
I believe that in terms of purchasing for affordable housing, your income is really just at the time of purchase. I'm not 100% on that, but I can look into it. I would imagine that as long as they meet the requirements at the time of purchase, then as long as they're not renting it out and they're inhabiting the unit, that it would be covered. But I can definitely get you some more information on that.
I can answer that, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
It's usually, most programs are at the time of sale, so you don't get kicked out of your house for something that you bought. However, if you sell the house before the 30-year restriction is up, you still have to sell it to a qualified buyer who meets the affordable housing restriction at that time. That's how most of the programs work.
Thank you, Emily.
That makes a lot of sense. Great, thank you.
Thank you. So, Austin, have you defined these units, which units will be affordable that we can put into that document?
Yes, so it will be what the applicant is proposing currently are the 4 one-bedroom units that will be known as 1A and I believe 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D. Or we can, nomenclature-wise, we can call them whatever we'd like. On the existing conditions plan, we show them as units 1A and 2A on the bottom floor, so we could do 1A and 1B and 2A and 2B and have those on a condo plat, and then those will be recorded with the covenant.
Okay, so on the drawing that we see here, Unit 1A, 2A, and Unit 1B and 2B, those would be the units?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask one more question.
Sure, Jim.
So I've looked at your parking plan, and it looks like you have more than enough parking for the number of people here. And so is most of the parking for the folks who are going to live in these units be in the back of the property? Is that how it's set up, or is it kind of like a free-for-all that people can park wherever they want to park, or there's just so many parking places?
Yeah, exactly. So realistically, each unit will have there's 7 units, 30 parking spaces. So there's room for guest parking. It can be a come as you are, other than the handicap spaces. We can definitely show something on a plan if that's something the board's interested in seeing. But where there is ample parking, I don't really think it's necessary to delineate that.
And I'm sorry, I said one question.
No, keep
just
going.
One more. So this, the abutter who was concerned about fencing, you mentioned there's a fair amount of trees and growth in between this property and his property.
Correct.
Do you feel that buffer is robust enough so that it will sort of minimize the impact on his property, having dwelling units nearby rather than just commercial units who would normally, people go home at 5 o'clock or so?
Yeah. I personally do. I did print some pictures. We got them a little bit later than submitting, which I could present to the board if you want to see them. So the situation is their home is off of King Street, their home is at the front of the property, and then there's a garage at the back side of the property that has some storage area around it. So this property is then, I guess if you're considering King Street, the frontage that we're talking about for their home, it's behind their garage. So there is actually a buffer of a garage and then some green space between the two properties. And once I said, it's, I guess, the eye of the beholder, but I would say that there is ample screening.
I mean, it looks like, looking at your plan here, it looks like there's probably a good, 35 feet before you even hit the parking lot. So if there's growth in there, although you do have snow storage planned for that area, but if there's sufficient growth there, then I'm not sure that a fence would be necessary, at least in my view of it, but.
You want to check the picture out?
Sure, I'd love to see it. Oh, you can hardly see the garage, yeah. Well, yeah, could you show that to everyone, please?
Yeah, so this is from the parking area from the property. Yeah, thank you.
So can you tell us, Austin, whose property is this greenery on? Is it on the subject property or is it on the neighbor's property?
I feel that there may be a small mix of both. If you look at the picture, you can see the edge of pavement in comparison to what the plan is. And there is, I'd say approximately, as Jim said, about 35 feet between where the edge of the parking is and where they would be. So I would say the majority of it is, the green space is on the applicant's property.
Any other thoughts from board members? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my notes I had touched upon the turning movement because the city engineer picked up and said the fire truck wheels came off the pavement, but I looked at the latest one. It looks like you've cleared that, and the only thing that's overhanging is the bumper swing, if you will.
Yep.
So I think that looked well, and I really appreciate you moving the dumpster so that we don't have to worry about an agreement with a neighbor for access. There was also a comment about the parking. So do you have a plan for restriping and ADA additions as the city engineer had picked up?
Yes, so if you are looking at sheet 1 of the plan set, on the front side of the building where the access is, there will be one regular ADA parking spot, which will be closest to Main Street. And then we have also provided provisions for a van space, which would be, I guess, 2 spots in from what we showed before. So 11 feet wide rather than 9.
Okay. Thank you. My final one, and maybe some board members could help kind of explain this one to me, because I understand pretty clearly what the planner said about, the qualification of the applicants at the time of renting or leasing, as well as now purchasing, because we're maintaining this condo status. And when I review their housing, the Affordable Housing Implementation and Reporting Plan, I'm seeing that everything is in the singular. They're talking about a singular owner. So yearly reporting, the property owner of 439 Main Street will be required to document and report the tenant's yearly anticipated household income and a rent rate for the previous and upcoming fiscal calendar years. There's nothing in there that talks about, how other owners, if it were to be sold in a condo capacity, who's going to be providing that. And then it says, in the event that a unit's tenant or tenants no longer qualify for the affordable rental program, they shall be required to vacate the property within 90 days or whatever timeline is required by the state of Maine. So it makes perfect sense to me if this was all held by one owner and you were doing rental agreements. I don't know how this would be enforceable if it were to be sold as a condo. And the best kind of analogy I can kind of think of in my head is if I had an adult child that was living at my house, I'm like, I don't want you here anymore, I'm buying you this condo, and they qualify and they move in. 5 years down the road, I die, and now they wouldn't qualify. They may not, with inheritance, they may not qualify for affordable housing, and hopefully they'd be self-sufficient. But there's no trigger in here if they're an owner to force them to sell, to force them to vacate. I mean, it's saying that they must leave. So I guess, should this document kind of be revisited and tweaked with the intent, if they want to retain the right to sell them as condos, should this document be kind of reworked so that it would include additional owners that would have reporting requirements and forceful removal, I guess, because ultimately it could be 5 years in and people could buy these at when they qualify when they buy, but then there's no longer an affordable matrix and they earn more. And I don't know. I mean, I think the goal here is we're striving as a community to try to provide this affordable housing, but this doesn't seem like a very rock-solid mechanism to maintain it long-term. And I think it's great we have an applicant that's trying to do something for us in our community. We just need to make sure we can maintain it for those 30 years.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
So the way that this is presented right here, I agree that this plan is for one owner renting the units out. So if we were to review this and approve it, my recommendation, when you're ready for conditions of approval, would be that there be a condition on here that says it cannot be sold as a condo until such time as the applicant comes back to the planning board and gets approval of whatever affordability provision they're going to have. In addition to this mechanism that's been laid out for the one owner rental situation, I would recommend a use restriction to be filed on the owner's property, all condos, indicating this affordable housing requirement in case the applicant sells all his interests in all the units at one time to another owner. That'll show up on chain of title. Similar to like what we did for the Similar in a way to what we did for the 46 Ocean Park Road workforce housing. There's a use restriction because of the parking. That was the parking waiver that was issued. So if the applicant wants to make this like a condo now, then we would ask for an updated affordability plan, condo docs, and everything to make this an actual full condo. If the applicant wants to retain it as one and do the rentals option, which this is what is provided to us today, then annually we'll be asking for that one owner to come back and report in all the affordable housing requirements on an annual basis. If it's separate owners, then we will ask for the record of how the affordable housing provision was met on the sale. And then something would go in the registry of deeds. It would have to be shown on the deed for the future chain of title that there's affordable housing restrictions on that unit.
So that all sounds good yet complicated at the same time. I think this needs to get updated as well. I was thinking it was as simply as the property owners of units, that's why I asked about the units, of property owners of units 1A, 2A, 1B, and 2B of 439 Main Street shall meet this requirement. Because from what I understand, there are currently 7 individual condominium units here.
Correct.
All owned by one entity, or it could be owned by 7 entities with one umbrella. That's all fine. So it's currently 7, so it seems like it should continue to be 7, that we pick the units, or the applicant picks the units, says 1A, 2A, 1B, and 2B are the affordable ones. This document specifically talks about that, and if there's an owner of that unit, if they're an owner, they have to own it under that, with that Affordable Act. Now, I'm not sure how it works when an owner now is doing it and converting it and retaining the ownership.
So we wouldn't, if it was one separate owner who lived there, we wouldn't be going out to them every year. We would just ask for them for the first time that they own it, that they qualify on that first sale, and then that they sell it to someone who qualifies in the future.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how do we, and maybe that's where Jeff was going with it. So how do we manage the applicant as owning it now, it being converted to affordable, but the current applicant owns it, but he could rent it to an affordable person. So how do we continue to allow that? If he were to sell it to someone, they would have to meet the affordable piece to purchase it, but then how do they, if they wanted to rent it to someone, how do we?
It has to be one or the other. So either the one owner is retaining either all ownership or majority of the ownership, but it needs to be spelled out because we need to know who we're going to get the data. If it's being, right now, the way this is worded to me, how I took this as we have Jackson Brown or his LLC is going to hold 7 units. 4 of those will be affordable. And every year I'm going to go to Jackson Brown, or someone in planning is going to go to Jackson Brown and say, hey, where's your report for this year? Do these people qualify for the rentals? If the goal here is to make this a condo, then we need condo docs and we need a different type of documentation to get that clarified for the record. So if Jackson's going to go sell, it can't be willy-nilly. We have to get this clarified.
Sure.
Yeah.
So as it sits now, with it being 7 condos, if the applicant would like to continue for it to be 7 condos, we update the document, but can the applicant retain ownership of all 7 condos and rent them out as affordable units?
Yes.
That's the part that I'm confused at.
Yes,
And then if
provided
the-
that he's following the rental restrictions. That's kind of how it's laid out almost now.
Even though the applicant, because he's making this conversion, he owns the affordable unit without meeting the affordable piece as an owner.
He's renting the affordable piece. That's why I said it needs to be clarified what the goal is.
But you can own, that's the part that I'm lost on.
If I may.
You own the affordable condo and then rent it as an affordable apartment.
I think what it is, it's more or less a device of Jackson likely couldn't live in the unit, So if he doesn't qualify for affordable housing, he couldn't inhabit the unit. Much like, say, a housing authority might own affordable housing. That housing authority may not qualify for low-income housing themselves, but they, as an entity, own it. So I do think that we could update this document to have language that says, if owner inhabited, you must meet this qualification. If rented by the owner, you need to make sure that the inhabitant of the unit meets the affordable.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think this is getting way confusing, more than it needs to be. I have very clear information from the board as to what the questions are. Let me
Okay.
vet them out with Austin and Jackson, and then return to you for the next meeting. And we can get the legal documentation all situated so you can review it.
Okay. Does that help to answer your question, Jeff, as well?
Very much so, yes, but there's another piece. Hopefully, when you do that conversation, can you kind of bring forth a plan? If it's a condo, how are their condo fees and sharing, cost sharing, going to take place if you have 3 units that are market rate and 3 that are affordable? How is that all going to work out so that they have the ability to maintain the structure here on Main Street? It's still part of the gateway of our community. I want to make sure that, the way it's proposed, it's great, in my opinion. We have one owner, an investor, solidly financial plan, willing to make the investment of supporting low income. As and probably has the ability to maintain a structure like that, putting new roofs, snow removal. Once we start splitting them up, that's a whole nother dimension, and it sounds like planning has that, but that's another piece that I'd like to know, not just today and tomorrow, next year, but what's it going to be in 10, 15 years from now? How are they going to be able to maintain this property? So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? Camille?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the items that I wanted to ask a little bit more about was kind of the traffic patterns associated with this new development. Based upon the letter, the traffic summary from BH2M, the existing use is about 34 daily trips, but upon the proposed use and development, it will be increased by about 40% to 47 daily trips. And as you know, Saco Main Street right now, pretty heavily trafficked, and particularly when individuals are taking that left to that side of the street. So just wanted to understand more of how's your team going to mitigate that? Because as much as we appreciate the activity in our central business district, I think we would also appreciate some alleviation from a traffic standpoint. So.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I believe that area is a 2-lane on either side of the traffic aisle, so there always will be a spot for queuing and a way to get around. So it's not like we're taking a 1-lane in either direction and blocking it off, creating a dam. Additionally, internally within the site, the exit of the site does have a left turn and a right turn lane. So there is the ability for, if someone is taking a left and it's going to take longer than taking a right, anybody can bypass them and go right. We, haven't triggered any of the thresholds for needing additional traffic review on this project. So in terms of more finite details, I don't really have much for you. But just based on the existing traffic patterns out there, we don't believe that this is going to cause any additional queuing or backup of traffic, if you will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts from board members?
Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, I'll move to open the public hearing.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion on opening the public hearing? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. If anyone is with us this evening to speak on this item, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we will collect all comments and address them at the conclusion.
Mr. Chair, seeing no member of the public wishing to speak tonight, and based upon some of the questions, very good questions, I think, that the board and the staff asked regarding condos versus rentals, I move to continue the public hearing until June 17, 2025.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion? Those in favor of continuing public hearing to June 17th, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
Vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. So with that, we had a couple good questions here, a few minor things to clarify, I guess. The big one being sort of that document there. I think you answered the turning movements within the site, talked about the buffer, we talked about the traffic there. Any other thoughts from board members on those items?
I guess just to clarify, at least I personally would like to have some provision in the conditions of approval that the applicant retains the existing greenery or retains a buffer between the pavement and the abutters.
Okay.
Sure, I see a lot of heads nodding. Sure. So with tidying the affordable document, could we, Emily, request a draft finding of fact and conditions of approval?
Yes, we'll have that ready for you. And there was, I just want to get clarity or confirmation from our city engineer that he's all set as well, because I don't have a final memo from him.
Sure. I know there was a question about striping, and we had plenty of parking, and asking about with the condo documents, there's going to be obviously limited common elements of where parking is going to be. There's plenty of parking. I don't think for this we need to be specific about a unit per parking for the affordable piece. Maybe as long as it's addressed as the affordable has 2 available parking spaces or whatever it is.
Okay.
I think we all agree it's just clarity on the affordable piece and the reporting, that's all. But
Perfect.
any other thoughts from board members?
May I ask just a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Is the board looking to ask that the units, the affordable units, be outfitted in a similar fashion to the market rate units, so you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between them if you go inside?
We are now.
I'm just wondering, are we looking for similar fit outs in the units? They could be different sizes, but.
Do we have something like that in our ordinance that talks about that? I know some municipalities do.
I'll confirm this and work on it with the applicant and report back at the next meeting.
Okay. Board members' thoughts? I guess where it's an existing project and a conversion, I guess my first thought is in a scenario where it's a new project that these units aren't segregated to an area, back entry doors, uncovered entries, sort of elements like that, but it seems like based on the existing conditions of the building, shapes of the space, there's an efficiency to putting the units in a particular area. I understand that. But you're talking about interior finishes, kitchens, bathrooms, things like that.
I'll check on it and report back.
I think that's a good point. Board members, any thoughts or questions on it? Jeff?
I wouldn't have thought that was something in our purview as a board. Because there's a business side of it too, right? I mean, it'd be great if all 7 units were affordable, right? And that way we wouldn't worry about it. It'd be equality across the board. But if he's going to be a single owner, and the fit-ups have to be a little bit different if you're trying to attract possibly market. I don't know. It just seems like there's multiple dimensions that you're going to try to achieve as a business owner. And I understand the point. We don't want it to be drastically different, at least on the outside. I always kind of have a hard time mixing affordable and market rate. I don't know if it's a harmonious mix.
It's all, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
What's that?
It is often done in other states. So let me check in with the state housing office and get back to the board on it.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's a great idea. Let's definitely look into it and see what our options are. I just wouldn't have ever thought of it as part of our review, but thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from board members? Joyce?
I guess just the other side of it, having lived in one of those buildings that had a mix of market and affordable, we are also providing a density bonus here, so it's not purely a business proposition. There's some additional incentives for the applicant too. But yeah. Beautiful marble tiled showers might be a little much to expect for affordable units. So it's an interesting question. But the building where we lived, the units were all indistinguishable from each other, and at least at outset of the development. I mean, obviously, if they're condoized, people own the inside of their condo, they can do whatever they want inside. So the units are bound to change over time.
All right, thank you. So Emily will confirm, I guess, gather a little bit more information on that. All right. So with that, if any other thoughts from board members, perhaps we can get a motion to continue to June 17th.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
Second?
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Yes.
Camille? I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Have a good night. Thanks.
All right, continuing along this evening, our next item on the agenda is 56 Smutty Lane. This is map 104, lot 12. This is for a 3-lot residential subdivision, and this is an application of completeness review. This is within the Rural Conservation Zoning District. This is presented this evening by Acorn Engineering on behalf of Big Ledge LLC. Board members, any conflicts or disclosures on this item? All right, with that, Emily, anything to add?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We do have a few items in the after-the-fact packet. I do want to say this has been a quick turnaround for this application. As far as when we received it and put it on the agenda, we just have a lot on June 17th, and it's a pretty small scope of an application, so we thought it was important to stagger the schedule for it, to get it to you earlier than waiting till June 17th, because your agenda is a little full that evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions for Emily at this moment? All right, and with us this evening, we have the applicant. Give us a lengthy presentation.
Sure. Good evening, Craig Burgess with Acorn Engineering, here tonight on behalf of Big Ledge LLC. Jason, the applicant's here with me as well. So yeah, as Emily pointed out, the application is pretty straightforward. It's 3 lots utilizing existing frontage. As part of the peer review and staff review, there were a couple minor issues brought up. Financial capacity, that was part of the after the fact material that was submitted today. That was on the checklist that we initially received. The wetland peer review identified a small little pocket of wetland up close to Smutty Lane, and we are in the process of having that wetland actually delineated and added to the plans. At this time, we don't think that it's going to affect the lot development. It's conveniently located between lots 2 and 3. Also, in the back of the lot, there is a shoreland district. It's the resource protection overlay. And what that is 75 feet off of the unnamed stream that runs north to south through the site. And that stream eventually makes its way over to Saco River. As part of the application, we did prepare a full stormwater report, which demonstrates that the addition of the single-family lot development will not increase peak rates at the southwesterly corner, which was identified as the point of analysis as part of the study. But at this point, I believe the other comments are minor in nature, and we plan on addressing them here next week or the week after. With that said, I'll open it up to the planning board. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant? Jim, go ahead.
I'll lead off. So the previously unknown wetland was, you said, between lots 2 and 3?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's right up against Smutty Lane. It's a small little pocket right up, maybe 400 square feet total.
And these are all lots with private water and private sewer?
Correct. The lots will be served by individual septic systems and private wells.
So I take it that the, on the plans, there's a couple areas for each lot designated as a reserve. Is that's for the septic systems?
Correct.
And where would the wells be?
The septic systems are generally located at the front and the wells are out back.
All right, I think I can see little blue dots.
Yes,
For each one.
that's
Those
the
are for the
well.
wells?
Yes.
Okay. And on Smutty Lane, I haven't driven that area recently, but there's no sidewalks on Smutty Lane on either side of Route 5, right?
Correct.
Okay. And all the frontage is on Smutty Lane. It doesn't look like from your plans, you're not including any interior roadways or anything like that?
None at all.
Then the last question I had to do with the, this question about the waiver for the boundary markers. I would imagine that these boundary markers, that this lot, I mean, it's a pretty clear rectangle. There must be corner pins for all 4 corners now. Is that right? Is that the case?
Yeah, everything's already all marked out there.
One thing and this may be a question you can answer, or if not, maybe Emily can educate me. But I looked at that requirement for the stone boundary markers, and I thought there was some reference to like 135 degrees at corners when there's, you know, where it's going to be like 135 degrees. And each of these looks like, if I remember my geometry, 90 degrees. For each corner. So does our requirement for stone boundary markers, does that even apply in this circumstance where it's less than 135 degrees?
I guess I did.
Can't answer that right off the top of my head, but I can certainly get you an answer.
Thank you, Emily.
That's all I had. Thank you, Emily. And
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts from board members? Jeff?
Sure, Mr. Chair, thank you. I too had, mentioned sidewalks because it's part of a subdivision, but obviously they're not building any infrastructure. We need to make a decision, I guess, on that piece. We had financial capacity, which they addressed in the after-the-fact packet. I too had questions on the boundary markers, and I wasn't interpreting it as being a stone marker. I was interpreting it as being a pin with a cap that was set. The deed that was in the packet had several locations that referenced to be set. And then it looks like the surveyor might be part of another one of your entities that has the same address. So I didn't really understand why we would be waiving something that should be pretty easy to set before you subdivide or before you sell the parcels. So I guess maybe we can get more clarification on what they're referring to, if it's a full monument stone marker or if it's just a pin and a cap. There was no clarification about underground utilities. It would still fall under a subdivision. I think we need to keep that on the radar. I had some questions on the VHB peer review site distance. They kept talking about generally agrees, it's flat. I kind of got the feeling that peer review was kind of a Google Earth high survey look, and they're like, yeah, it's flat, where we think it'll work. I don't know if anybody ever went out there to confirm the site distances. They were very helpful in the numbers that would be required, but I didn't feel like they were field verified. Like I said, I touched on the surveyor. I guess kind of the biggest one is it's pretty clear that the intent is to make the subdivision of 3 lots, even though the applicant or an entity of the applicant owns the previously subdivided lot. And your interpretation was is that it wasn't going to fall under the DEP stormwater review or the NERPA reviews because of the amount of space that was being prepared. And I guess I got most of this information from page 42 of 51 of your application in our packet. And the numbers that you provided said the proposed project will result in 7,855 square feet, 0.2 hundredths of an acre impervious, and 38,427 square feet of disturbed area, which is 0.88 acres. And you went on to say that there was not more than 1 acre being disturbed. Well, when I added those numbers together, it's 1.08 acres. If you do it by square feet, it looks like you're over by 2,722 square feet. So my question was, we're trying to pigeonhole the subdivision in with the amount of disturbed land and impervious land, so you don't have to do the additional reviews. I don't really understand the hydro modeling is great, but we have no idea. You have like zero control over what's going to be developed on the lot, because it sounded like it's very clear these are going to be sold and built out by others. And when that happens, we oftentimes very much lose control over your calculations, how it's going to be built out, how much they're going to clear, how much they're actually going to disturb. And I also noticed on the 6 test pits that you had, the limiting factor was groundwater at 16 to 18 inches deep. So we know it was a very wet area again, which then brings up questions about water quality, hydrogeological assessments, and for me, it's just a little bit, I think there's a lot of pieces missing to find this application complete. We know the applicant has the technical ability to build these out and make it great. We've seen it on some of his other projects. But we've also seen the flip side is that when you create the subdivision and you relinquish yourself from the responsibility of building it out for any provisions that we may have for stormwater or runoff, that control is now gone, that oversight is gone, and I appreciate the fact that you had a lot of things in your packet about wintertime construction to try to minimize and stabilize and runoff. And I guess I kind of think about a previous site walk that we took, and speaking of that, I think we should do a site walk for this site. I think it would be helpful to gain information. I think of another one that I think you had previously subdivided, but you had somebody else build it out on Wyatt Drive and now Ruby Lane, and we were there for an abutting site walk, and there was a lot of neighbor feedback about basements and water and all these things, which when you create the subdivision, you let other people build it out, everyone's trying to make their couple dollars on it, and they may take some shortcuts that you may not have taken, and then we end up with new citizens in our town that aren't necessarily happy with the results of the product that they received. And I just want to be very, very mindful is that it's still a subdivision. Our role is to still review and check on these boxes, right? We're supposed to be looking for the water quality and the runoff and treatment. It's an unnamed tributary, but it still can have runoff capabilities or issues, as well as this groundwater. Are they going to appropriately fill enough for the type of structure that they're going to put on here if there's a basement? So unless we have a lot of conditions that are attached to the sale of each lot, very clearly the limits of what they can expand, because we're just trying to sneak under the full-blown stormwater runoff of this, which, like I said, the numbers you provided, you're over by 0.2 of an acre. I don't think it meets the qualification because that's a missing piece of the application. So either we have some limits that decrease the amount of disturbed area and impervious area that's created, or we need more information to find the application complete. So I think those were kind of some of the items that I found, and obviously there's a lot there for board discussion, but I think it's a little bit more than kind of a quick application to process for 3-lot subdivision, where we're so close to those limits of what I feel like we're supposed to be checking off. That's in our ordinance. Those are what we're supposed to be reviewing. So those are my thoughts, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? Craig, could you maybe hit it? Jim,
No, no,
you want to
no.
go first?
Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Can you maybe hit on a couple of those items
Sure,
that
yeah.
Jeff mentioned?
Jeff brought up a lot of great points. So I'll start with the underground utilities. So cable, power, that will be brought underground from the utility poles. And conveniently, there's a utility pole almost right at each lot. Worked out perfect. VHB, I don't know if they actually went out to the field, but we do have more than 490 feet of sight distance in both directions, which meets the standard. But more importantly, about stormwater. So the threshold for water quality in the city of Saco is 10,000 square feet. And the applicant is open to a condition that there will be no more than 3,300 square feet of impervious area per lot. The numbers that you read, I'd like to increase the impervious to 3,300 because I want to stay below 10,000 total square feet for the entire project, because that's the actual threshold that we're trying to stay below. So it provides a little bit more buffer. The threshold for main DEP permit is 1 acre of impervious area. And we're planning on staying well below that. And the threshold for a stormwater permit by rule is 1 acre of total development. And as you noted, we're likely going to be a little bit above that, but it brings up a good point on the applicant plans on selling the lots. And under stormwater management law and site location, when you sell single-family lots to a different entity, it's no longer viewed as part of the application. So I intend to look into that and how it applies to permit by rule standards. I believe the same standard might apply, but I intend to look into that to see if maybe a stormwater permit by rule would apply. But the only difference would be is that a permit by rule application to DEP is a pretty straightforward application. It's a 14-day turnaround, and they don't look at water quality. Instead, they really focus on erosion control practices. And as part of the application, we did submit an erosion control plan that there'll be silt fence installed around each of the lots when they're being constructed. So we fully intend on staying below that 10,000 square foot threshold through the city of Saco, so that stormwater treatment is not required. And when we looked at our HydroCAD model, we didn't use the actual numbers that were presented. Instead, HydroCAD has built-in curve numbers, CN numbers, for different size lots. And in this case, we looked at half-acre lots to stay on the conservative side. So HydroCAD has like a built-in curve number that we use for a half-acre lot that has an assumed amount of impervious area on that lot. And when I looked at that assumed amount, it was higher than what we were actually proposing. So I think the model took a pretty conservative standpoint. I don't have what that percentage of impervious area that's assumed as part of that curve number, but we do feel that the HydroCAD model was generally conservative when it comes to looking at lot development, and it really didn't look at specific numbers. The lot development, the driveway, the house, those were all still conceptual at this point, so the applicant would prefer that there's a condition so that each lot has no more than 3,300 square feet of impervious on each lot. I don't know if that answers your question, but, and also I want to note that along that stream, we intend to preserve a minimum 100-foot buffer along those streams, and the way the topography lays across the land is the stormwater, the runoff from the lots will generally flow as sheet flow towards the stream and through those wooded buffers. So technically there's some level of treatment that will be provided just through the preservation of those wooded buffers on site. That was something we talked to staff with at the onset of the project, is making sure that those buffers were preserved. So the stream protection district is 75 feet, and then typically when you reach out to Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, they recommend 100 feet be protected. So we feel like we're taking that more conservative approach and completely preserving 100 feet along that unnamed stream. I'm happy to answer any other questions, but I feel like with the water quality, I feel like we are staying below this thresholds, and we're not intentionally doing that. I feel like naturally staying below 10,000 square feet will work for this project.
Great, thank you. Jeff, go ahead, that answered.
I think it's very helpful. I think it's great that we have a developer that's going to go, willing to go to the 100-foot setback. We don't oftentimes see that. There again, I think it's important we do a site walk to kind of get a better sense of that, because we may want to do something with, if they can do something with deed restriction, so we know that that buffer will never be cleared once they sell the lots. And I mean, all the modeling and percentages are great, but obviously a very technical field, and I would just maybe we can have staff understands what the question was and have our very competent city engineers kind of review and make sure that we're all on the same page and that they're comfortable with the review and the modeling that was provided.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we did get a memo from Joe Laveria. It will be in the next meeting packet. We just got it after the packet. I should have had it in here for you, but
Okay.
I can pull it up on the screen too if you want to take a look at it, but there weren't major concerns noted about the modeling for stormwater.
Yeah, could you throw it up? I know the applicant may not have been able to see it as well, but that might.
Made sure the applicant got it.
Oh, okay.
It just
All right,
isn't in the packet.
Board just didn't get it, okay. Okay.
Another quick note for Jeff. So as far as all the pinning's been done for all the lots already. Horizons Surveying is actually the company that actually did all the surveying and all the site distances. So yeah, I do have a licensed surveyor that's on my team now. So his job is basically development project manager. So he basically stays on top of the engineers and making sure everybody's doing their job. So he's not in the field anymore, but he does a lot of my pre-designs before we give them to the engineers. But the actual survey work was done by Horizons Surveying, not from us, and all the pins are set. And I think we kind of read, the reason why the waiver for the monuments was, I think we read that the original four corners of the property were supposed to be granite, and everything was we had already existing pins out there. So that's kind of why we just asked for the waiver, was because there was already existing pins. Talking to my licensed surveyor on, has been doing it for 30 some odd years, he always felt that pins are actually a lot more stable than granite monuments, because you have to dig a granite monument and then backfill it, so it's always loose until the ground settles around it, versus a pin is driven in 3-4 feet, and it's a lot more stable and a lot harder to pull out. So that was the reasoning why we asked for the waiver of the pins. But all the pins for every single lot is already set, and the site distance was all done by a surveyor to kind of alleviate that question. And these particular 3 lots, I'm actually going to work with my son to build, because this is directly across the street from my house. So we're going to be doing a little bit more of an upscale for as far as houses, only because I live there and I just want to kind of build it up and make it look nice and actually teach my son how to build a house at the same time. So I will be first, on hand with these 3 lots as well. I know we've had a couple projects that we sold off and other projects we fully built out. This one we tend to keep. So that helps ease your mind a little bit on that. So.
In the engineering review, I believe that Emily mentioned, it did actually have a note about deed restrictions on the lot, and the applicant is fully open to that, and we'll be working with a lawyer to prepare those deed restrictions on the lots.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Jim.
I was, just to clarify what I had been talking about earlier with the monuments, it's Chapter 188, so it's Section 188-807, boundary monuments. And my read of it is that granite monuments in this circumstance would not be required, so you don't need a waiver. And as Jeff pointed out, subsection E of that section of our code mentions that, pins are fine for every subdivision, except for those who have the circumstances where a granite monument would be required. So I think you really don't need the waiver, at least how I read it, unless the staff says I'm wrong, but
Yeah, I read it the same, Jim. I don't see that section being applied and it requiring a waiver either. Any other thoughts from board members? So Jeff had some good questions. The applicant responded to those. We have some comments from our city engineer that will be included in the last packet. Jeff mentioned a site walk. Let's do that. The board members feel a site walk would be a good exercise. I see some nods here. So with that, sorry, I'm just getting to my page here.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to scroll?
Oh, sure. Yeah, if there's
Looks like there's some reading.
yeah, if there's more to it. So that condition there, Jeff, number 3, does that address the thought or in question about lot clearing and that you had mentioned? Would that,
I think that, yeah, I think that the city engineer is very much on the same page, that the applicant's okay with it. It's going to be recorded on the deed before they sell the individual lots, and they're going to flag it. So hopefully, I mean, we'll be able to see that during our site walk of how much area we're actually talking about for the buffer. And then hopefully it'll be in place when they sell the parcel, so the owners will have a conceptual idea of where they're limited to as well. I think that's very helpful. Thank you.
okay. With that, I know one of the conversations that we've had as a board, and we seem to hear a lot from residents once projects are built out. I guess I'd like to have board input as well. You know, we notice it quite a bit. It always comes up. It doesn't seem to get past us, but the high groundwater in some areas. So we've asked in the past to see some grading around some of the, the lot and placement of the structures. But one, and get Emily's comment as well and thoughts, but, putting restrictions, it seems, I wish it were unnecessary. But the idea and thought of putting restrictions in conditions that no floor level shall be located below observed groundwater level without X, Y, and Z. I mean, I'd like, Craig's thoughts on it too, but we see so many projects where the developers, the applicants, they do such a great job with mitigating stormwater and controlling runoff, and then we hear, my basement's wet and it pumps all the time, and so I'm just trying to, and I know the applicant talked about building these out and working through it, but I'm just, with groundwater at 16 inches, and then we put basements 8 feet below the grade, and then, 2 years from now, that, we'll see applicants that say, my basement's wet all the time. So I'm just, love to hear from you folks as well, but just sort of, it's just something that we like to try to work through, that's all, and just discuss, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's a good question. So I mean, when they do all these test pits, I mean, you're talking about, layers of ground. So you could go down, 12 inches of loam and then all of a sudden hit a clay layer and then say, oh, there's going to be where it's going to have sitting water is going to be at that clay layer. But it doesn't necessarily mean that when you build a house, when you're punching into that clay layer and you're on a hillside. So this particular property, the biggest advantage we have is this little brook that's in the back, where, we could actually do a positive drain. You don't have to run a sump pump at all. This brook is probably about 20 feet lower than the front up by Smutty Lane. So it just slowly keeps rolling down to the back of the hill. So we'll be able to do a positive drain on all these houses. So when you start looking at the limiting factor for like any subdivision, they're doing all these soils tests and everything. I mean, you're basically just kind of seeing, it's like, okay, is the sand layer go down and then all of a sudden turn to a hard pan or whatever. But that doesn't necessarily mean that 100 feet away, you could drop off 15 feet. So, a perfect example is that you could have a pond on top of a mountain, because it's rock. And it's basically the same thing no matter where you go in Maine is, you could have this clay pond, and then 20 feet over, it could drop off 30 feet. And that clay pond could have a spring and stay full all the time and actually overflow and run down over a hill. So when you're kind of looking at these limiting factors of these test pits, it doesn't really tell you that's actually a water table. It just says that's where the water's kind of running along a wrong layer. But once we start building, constructing, we could rechange what happens around the foundation and move the water around the foundation if we're up on top of a knoll or hill or a higher ground down to a lower area. So the limiting factors, you got to really take that with a grain of salt. So, and I think when you do the site walk, you're going to really get a better visual that water in the basement's never going to happen if it's done right and done with a positive drain.
Okay, great, thank you. Jim?
Mr. Chair, I'm looking at the application checklist, and there's a number of conditions there that things that we need to attend to. One would be a site walk, and I agree. I think a site walk would be very helpful. There was a financial capacity that's been answered. There was a waiver for the boundary markers, but I don't think that's necessary. There was a note about no cut areas on the plan set. Has that already been done?
It should be in the after the fact material. I did send it to the planning department last week.
So you've already addressed that by.
We've already gone through and looked at the areas, and where that is, it's around each of the wetlands. There's a small pocket of wetlands to the south, so there's a no-cut area around that, as well as up against that 100-foot buffer.
Well, thank you. So with that, I know, Jeff, you had mentioned that perhaps determining the application complete might be premature, but then we have had a fair amount of testimony from the developer and the engineer explaining what they've done and what they intend to do. Do you still feel that it's premature to determine the application complete, understanding that we're going to be working through a lot of these issues and fine-tuning them? And it certainly seems like the applicant is on top of all those issues. Just a question.
I mean, I agree that a lot of the stuff they've addressed, the boundary markers, the survey, we know that the pins are set, we'll verify when we're out there. I guess the biggest question and the biggest piece that I see that could be missing, I feel like it's the city, is the determination of this exact square footage of the treatment for the stormwater review, right? Is that we're on that cusp, that line. And then if they were to do a positive drain because there's that much elevation change between this non-named tributary in the back, does that water have to be counted as treated as it's a perimeter drain and roof drain? So I still think there's several pieces that people with higher education level than us on the board should be reviewing and commenting on. Is just my thought, and I think Mr. Chairman brought up a very good point. Is these subdivisions, we rely on a lot of very technical data. And sometimes we've had beautiful prints that were drawn, and we're going to do this for draining. And we do hear comments about, oh, I still have a wet basement, I still have this issue. Yet we've also seen results of very well-designed plans that people that have had issues with water, and we were very diligent. I'm thinking of one off of Jenkins Road where there was a couple that was very vocal, and we made it a condition of approval that the developer had to build out this lot, and it had to be graded the way his engineer said. And since then, we've had other applications immediately adjacent, and we didn't hear anything. So hopefully, I mean, that's for somebody who was very forthright and comfortable expressing concerns, they didn't have any more concerns. So it seems like that solved the problem. And that is, I think, is what is so critical, is that we can try to set an elevation, right? No basement slab below groundwater. Well, do we have the technical expertise in our code enforcement to, set benchmarks and have them check this? I mean, that's an awful lot of burden to put on our code office. And that's one of the reasons why when they come to us and they build it out, they design it and they build it out, and it's one cohesive plan, it makes it much easier for our conditions of approval to be a little bit more bite. Now you've got somebody to go back to in this application, right? And I think it's a great opportunity. You're doing something, and your son might be getting into the business. You're going to let him build it out. It's a good learning piece. But we need, if it's not truly built by one entity, we've got nobody to go back to. If they build one lot and then they sell one to somebody else, you have no guarantee on any conditions that we may observe when we're out there, that they will be built, because it'll be, oh, their excavator didn't do that. It's this finger pointing thing, right? And now you've got one lot that has been very well built up and kind of crowned and drained and positive drains, and the next house next to it, they wanted to save a few bucks, and they set it in a poor spot, and the runoff's not there. And they're thinking that the one that was done right is the reason their place is flooding. So it's just, we need to be aware and cognizant, and make it such that the consumer that receives these are going to be happy. And I think it's very difficult to do when we have that open loop, right? I think if we were to be looking at this and the applicant saying, yes, I'm building out all 3 lots, we have a couple items that are still missing, we're going to wait for the city engineer to say, yes, this is absolutely correct as far as the 10,000 square feet or the 1 acre, we agree with the applicant's engineer, that would be easy. I think we need to be a little bit cautious, because it's very clear the intent here is to sell them off individually, and they can be built out by any third-party contractor. That's just where I don't want to rush the application acceptance.
Mr. Chair, I guess my thought, though, is this is an application acceptance. This is just completeness review, and if the applicant has provided documentation that satisfies the checklist, and then we still need peer reviews, we still need review from the city engineer, that's a different part of the process. All we're doing tonight is determining, has the applicant submitted a complete package, even if it's, it can't, well, it could be perfect, I suppose, but they seldom are to start with. It seems to me we're maybe putting the cart before the horse a little bit, and trying to make the application perfect and ready to go tonight, and all we really need to do is determine, has he submitted the documentation he's been asked for, so that the review can commence and continue.
Okay, so with that thought process, if we were to find it complete, and then city's engineer comes back and says, hey, we need this different type of stormwater review, that's perfect. Then that makes perfect sense. I'm fine with that, as long as we're not, barring ourselves from getting that additional information that we may request. So,
I guess I don't think it's any different than asking for a follow-up. We need more information about ABC. So, and yeah, we do We always need more information. This is just a start, and the site walk will help with that, too.
You know, I do appreciate the concern, though, Jeff, because, and I've been on the board just long enough to, I've seen some of those projects, and I've heard complaints from some of the homeowners who are, you know, walking around to, you know, additions to subdivisions and so forth. And so I think it's very appropriate that we're very attentive to that. And I think, you know, when you hear 16 to 18 inches, there's water at 16 to 18 inches deep. I mean, I think Jason's explanation is perfectly logical, and, you know, we may end up going with that. But I do think that we should be paying attention to those things and trying our best to make sure that any new houses built in Saco don't, you know, have wet basements if at all possible, because that's a source of great concern to, you know, them and neighbors. So I agree with Joyce, though. I think for tonight, application completeness, I think we're there, but I think there will be issues that we'll have to work through in the future.
Thank you, Jim.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we determine the application complete.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
A second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Abstain.
Camille?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Motion passes 4-0 with one abstention. So with that, we have found the application complete. We discussed the waiver that we found it was unnecessary. We had a lot of good discussion. Craig, you had some explanation of the HydroCAD. We talked about the wetland that's going to get updated. We're going to do a site walk. We'll schedule that here in a few minutes. We talked about concerns of groundwater. Mr. Labonte mentioned that we can do positive drain outlooks to daylight. I think showing that or noting that on the plans, I think would be good. And then having the discussions with the city engineer on a lot of these, on the stormwater, the quality and treatment. I think that's good. I share and appreciate Jeff's thoughts as well. I think there's a few kind of clarifying pieces and components to everything, but talked about utilities, sidewalks. Your responses on the max impervious areas, the total clarity on that DEP, PBR, that all of those sort of pieces and parts, I think, between now and I suspect if the board finds to schedule a public hearing for July 1st, if that still works, that's almost a whole month. And it'd be nice, Emily, if we could meet prior to that, do our site walk prior. So if we have any other questions that we can address those and we can have those hopefully answered or addressed for that July 1st meeting. But that's, any other thoughts from board members? Is that a good summary? Do we have any dates, Emily, that could potentially work to meet on site? And
June 23rd, which is a Monday, June 25th, which is a Wednesday. Do you have anything else there, Lisa? And Lisa's got June 30th.
Did you say June 23rd?
Yes, it's a Monday. That's probably the best option.
Yeah, so Monday morning.
You could do morning, or we could, now that it's getting later, we could do afternoon too.
I can make anything work. Mornings are my favorite, but does anyone prefer morning? Jeff, morning? Late? We know Jeff gets up at like 4, so. He starts work early. Yeah.
We can, if the majority of the board wants to do like 8 o'clock, I mean, I can make that happen. If not, after 5 would be great, but.
8 o'clock on the 23rd, Monday morning? Okay, let's do that.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we schedule a public hearing for July 1st. This matter.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I will second.
Second by Jeff, thank you. Any additional discussion on scheduling a public hearing for July 1st? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Great. Any other final questions for us?
Nope. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is item 7C. This is 800 Portland Road, map 59, lot 1. And this is a proposal for a 49-unit residential condominium with 3,000 square feet of commercial building space. This is a continued public hearing and application review. And it appears, Emily, this has been requested to be tabled to June 17th.
Yes, the applicant has been in contact with us, and they're working on further coordination with the agencies and addressing the comments. It was just a little quick for them to turn it around and then for us to get the review done too.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily. Any other thoughts or questions from board members on that?
Just one, Mr. Chair. Emily, do you think, if it's all right to ask Emily directly,
Absolutely.
do you think that a number of those findings of fact and conditions of approval will be narrowed down by the 17th?
I believe so. I'm waiting to hear back from them, but I believe we can get them narrowed down, yep.
Okay.
For the info I have now. If something changes, then they may change, but
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we continue review of this proposal to June 17th.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Jeff. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes?
Jeff?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
He's keeping us awake.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Just making sure you're awake. Everybody. Great. That concludes our public hearings for this evening. Our next item, Emily, general correspondences. Anything additional or beyond these after-the-fact packets this evening?
No, thank you.
Great, thank you. Our next item, any planning department updates and discussion?
Yes, I had provided a draft ordinance amendments outline just for the board to kind of start to go through, kind of get a little familiar, maybe look at those sections. Don't really have a lot to go over with you tonight. I'm going to the Long Range Planning Committee on the 5th to talk about where we are with the different projects and timelines going forward. But I just want to make sure that you received it as well. I sent it to the Long Range Planning Committee, and I've asked the city administrator to share it with the councilors, just so that we're all on the same page moving forward. Just as a follow-up or a recap, these were ordinance amendments that have been in the queue for a little while. They are pending finalization of the contract zone project that we've been on for a little bit. So once that contract zone project is done, then we'll be ramping up in full gear to bring these forward.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions or thoughts on this draft outline for Emily? Great, that gives us, it's a good little update to review. Any planning board comments, thoughts, questions, concerns? Jeff?
So Emily, you had pointed out that tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. here is the final housing kind of brainstorming public comment session. I think it's a great, I mean, hopefully it's the first one I'll be able to make, so I'm planning, hopefully I'm being here. Any special advice? We have to be very careful the number of board members that we put together in a forum like that. If we kind of each keep our space into whatever bubbles are going on, we're fine having more than 4 here. Is that correct?
Also a publicly advertised event, so it'll be clear that you're not just, I don't know how to put it, but it's a publicly advertised event, and we encourage all the committee and board members to show up.
Were there citizens? Do we have to RSVP for that? I thought that I'd seen something asking for a head count.
It would be great if you do RSVP online, but that's just to give us a general idea of who's attending so that we know how to set up the room. If you want to RSVP online, you can, but I think we've pretty much got a sense of the numbers that we should get tomorrow.
It's confusing because the election training is tomorrow too, but that must be at Thornton and not here.
We have this room tomorrow, so.
Joyce, I think if you RSVP, you can get the comfy chairs in the back for the table.
And Lisa's bringing snacks enough for all of us.
We did have snacks at the last one, like granola bars and stuff. I don't want to get your hopes up.
No bacon, though.
There's no bacon.
All right, well, with that, we will adjourn at 7:34 p.m. Thank you, everyone.